right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another little video here where Christy and I are talking about what we think everyone should know, or at least the basics of what we should all know to give us the best chance of living better for longer. And today we wanted to talk about sleep. As a side note, I have a 1 month old, so I'm not getting very much sleep. Although if you ask
Yay.
my wife, I'm definitely getting more than she, so I can't be complaining too much. But this seems, I guess, like a good a time as any. So, Christy, tell us why sleep is important if we want to give us the best chance of living better for longer.
Well, first of all, I think that one of my like mantras of life is if you don't sleep well, like everything else gets worse. Like your outlook on life, first of all, like mental health, your ability to um, problem solve and like face challenge. I think many people recognize they're more emotionally unstable when sleep is out of whack. But we also know that there's a lot of impact physiologically on chronic disease risk. And so for those reasons, making you a not horribly angry, challenging to be around person and reducing your risk of chronic disease and just helping you feel good. I think sleep is a cornerstone.
For sure. Thanks for reminding me why I might
Yeah,
have the best
I'm
mood right now.
sleeping great. I am
Thank you. Thank
sleeping so
you. So
great.
happy for you. Um, so yeah, I think that's a good disclaimer. Like we're gonna be talking about like chronic medical conditions, but there's just like, enjoying your life and
Yeah.
feeling good and all these things that are super, super important that we're gonna dive into later, but is not necessarily the clear-cut focus on this video. So then
Right.
what sort of chronic diseases does sleep really impact? Tell us about that.
I think that anytime we talk about chronic disease impact, we have to start with cardiovascular disease because it's such a huge cause of death and not just death, but also like reduced quality of life. So one of the studies that really gave some insight into the impact that sleep has on cardiovascular disease came out of the UK, and they had almost 400,000 patients, and they like ranked them on having a sleep score. And the healthiest sleep score was if you had an early chronotype. So if you like went to bed early, woke up early, if you slept 7 to 8 hours a day, if you never or almost never had insomnia or like inability to fall or stay asleep pretty significantly, you didn't snore, and you didn't feel excessively sleepy during the day. So that was like 5 out of 5 best sleep. And at the end of 8.5 years, they compared that to people who had a sleep score of 0, so did none have none of those good things. They're sleeping very few hours. They're not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep. They're feeling really sleepy during the day, stuff like that. And when you looked at the difference, the people who had the high sleep score had a 35% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. They had a 34% risk of coronary heart disease, so blocked arteries in the heart that leads to heart attacks, and then 34% reduced risk reduction in stroke. To put that in perspective, we've done previous videos on blood pressure, and we've just like hounded blood pressure is so important. We have to reduce blood pressure to reduce cardiovascular risk. And the big trial we looked at there was the SPRINT trial, and they looked at a composite of all of these things, but the risk reduction was 27%. So that we're getting 35 with sleep, such a huge impact. Um, so I think that like cardiovascular disease is like probably the first one we have to talk about there. And I should probably let you comment since you're a heart doctor.
No, no, no. I just, I guess, I think, obviously the trial you're mentioning, it sounds like was not a randomized control trial because it's
Right, like the
incredibly
SPRINT trial was.
unethical for us to randomize people to getting terrible sleep, that you would go to jail for that. Um, but so we have to there's a little bit of a take it with a grain of salt because it is not a randomized controlled data. It's more of
Right.
observational trial as opposed to the sprint trial, which was a randomized controlled trial. But tell us why we think maybe, this isn't just not biased study, like there is
Hmm.
merit to the big risk reduction from better sleep. So what specifically do you think bad sleep does that puts us at risk for having heart disease?
First of all, I mean, when everyone thinks of stress, they think of high cortisol, right? And so we know that when you have a sleep deprivation of not really even that much, it doesn't have to be like you only slept 2 hours that night, like even a minimal sleep deprivation can increase cortisol levels, activates the sympathetic nervous system, therefore increases your blood pressure. We know that all those sympathetic hormones like epinephrine, norepinephrine, the cortisol I mentioned, all those things are going to raise your blood pressure. We also know it affects the way you metabolize glucose. We call it lower glucose tolerance. Um, and and finally, I think we've talked in our previous videos about inflammation, and we know that having reduced sleep or sleep deprivation can lead to higher inflammatory markers, and that chronic low grade inflammation can put us at a greater risk of cardiovascular disease.
Okay, so bad sleep equals higher risk of having high blood pressure, higher risk of having high cortisol, higher risk of
Mm-hmm.
having diabetes or prediabetes or insulin resistance,
Mm-hmm.
higher risk of inflammation. Therefore, it would make sense that this observational study, while not a randomized trial, is is indicating maybe there is some causality because we have clear mechanistic
Yeah.
explanation.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So then what else? Obviously, I'm pretty focused on cardiovascular disease, but what else
Mm-hmm.
does sleep impact? What other diseases?
So the big one for me as a internal medicine, but primarily weight loss doctor, is sleep deprivation, even in a slight amount, causes a large change in hormones that regulate appetite, and that really um, can really drive up your weight. So um, the two main hormones I like to tell patients about is, first of all, the hunger hormone ghrelin, and the second is the fullness hormone leptin. So we know that when you are sleep deprived, you have higher levels of the hunger hormone ghrelin. And I think it was the Wisconsin sleep study that
Mhm.
showed like a 15% higher levels of ghrelin in patients who slept less and 15% lower levels of leptin. So you have this biology of a really powerful hunger hormone driving your appetite when you've slept less. So many people I say, you ever notice like when you didn't have a good night's sleep, it's just harder to say no to cravings, or like you just find yourself ravenous. And sometimes I think we think that's like a coping mechanism, but there's really biology driving it, and that all has its basis um, in sleep deprivation. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about sleep apnea coming up here. Like I think that's a big one. Like sleep apnea is a sleep related chronic disease that can lead to many other chronic diseases, um, and and has a big impact on many things, and is not just patients with overweight or obesity condition.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned the like saying no to things and it's harder when you're sleep deprived. I just think
Mm-hmm.
of like, I'm sure you've had the same experience, like when you're on nights and it's
Oh.
like, you're so tired, you're not getting the
Mm-hmm.
sleep that you normally
Mm-hmm.
want, you're working the night shift and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh my gosh, someone comes in with something, it's 2 in the morning and you're up and
Yep.
so tired, it's like, that looks so
So good.
good. And it's
Yes.
like, that's so cool. There is a reason. It's like, well, part of
Mm-hmm.
that's probably because your hunger hormone is up and your
Mm-hmm.
feeling full hormone is down. No
Mm-hmm.
wonder that looks amazing. So
Yeah.
that's what I think of when you mentioned that. I just think of back to night shift.
Oh
It's so
man,
hard to say no.
those were dark days. I think too, there's so much, I mean, just a little bit of a side note, but I find that patients have so much, just like you had there, like this aha moment of like, oh, this is the biology behind what these behaviors that I thought, I didn't really understand. Like, oh, there's a reason for that. And when we understand there's a reason for those things and know how to change them, that's pretty empowering.
Yeah, for sure. For
Except we had no control over night shift, so we were
Yeah, we
just,
had to work night shifts, dang it.
yeah,
Uh,
that was the worst.
but as a side note to that, so many people work night shift. Like there's a
Right,
ton of
that's
people that are
normal.
working night shift or
Hmm.
swing shift or all those things. It's like, all right, we need to like have a plan to
Yep.
counteract that or know that's what's going on because it is a like, we're lucky it was just for a little bit in training, but there's lots of people
Yeah.
that's their life.
Yep. For sure.
So we talked a little bit about like sleep duration. So how long or how little you sleep impacting risk of heart disease and obesity and diabetes. But there's more to just how long you sleep, right? There's the quality of sleep.
For sure.
So
Yep.
what can you tell us about ways that we can make sure that we're actually getting good quality sleep, or what conditions affect the quality of sleep we get?
Mhm. I think the biggest thing I would say to that is, like, first of all, be aware of what your body is telling you during the day, and your body will often tell you, "Hey, I didn't get a good night's sleep last night." You can just tell you have this, what we call in medicine, excessive daytime sleepiness. If you're spending the time in bed, like I'm asleep, let's say for 8 hours, but I just wake up every day just feeling like I got rocked and like do not feel well rested. That's a sign that there might be an issue with the quality of sleep, and you should probably talk with a doctor or other healthcare provider about what might be going on. Um, I think also, if your partner or the person you're in bed with says that you snore, that's a sign that there may be some quality issues with your sleep. And that gets to a larger issue of sleep apnea too. That's a big issue.
What do we do about sleep apnea? How do we know if we
Yeah.
have it? What are the signs and symptoms
Yeah.
telling us sleep apnea?
So sleep apnea basics are: apnea means stopping breathing. Um, and so that when you do that in your sleep, it's called sleep apnea. So what happens usually, we think about obstructive sleep apnea, and the mechanics of the mouth and the jaw and the tongue can obscure the airway and stop you from taking a breath in. Your oxygen levels get low, and then you have this like often alert, kind of alert yourself response, like the I don't want to say like like the snort, wake yourself up snoring type of thing. Some people don't experience that, but that stress of having the low oxygen levels and stopping breathing, and then coming right back up when your body kind of re-alerts itself, can cause a lot of detrimental health effects. um, so things to watch for, again, like that excessive daytime sleepiness is a sign that, maybe we should think about your risk for sleep apnea. Snoring, another big risk for sleep apnea. Uncontrolled blood pressure. One of the first things I think when I'm having a patient on like 3 blood pressure meds and it's just not coming down is like, do they have sleep apnea? We know that cortisol response, and maybe you can speak to the physiology of this more too, like in response to those apneic episodes at night can lead to higher blood pressures. Um, so those are the main things I talk about. Anything else you say look for with patients?
No, I mean, I think I look for it all the time, just like you, because it's so
Hmm.
prevalent. I mean,
Hmm.
you can probably speak to this, but like, who are the type? I think there's often a stereotype for people that have
Hmm.
sleep apnea, but that's not always the case.
Right. Yeah. So it's classically people think of it as people who have a larger body habitus or more like neck tissue as obstructing the airway, more at risk for sleep apnea. But really, it's just a jaw, tongue, mouth mechanics type thing. So you don't have to be at an unhealthy body weight to get sleep apnea. And not everyone who does have obesity, overweight, gets sleep apnea. So we really have to be on our guard regardless of the weight that we're at.
Yeah, I remember I sort of going into, training was like everybody else probably thought it was only obese people that got sleep apnea.
Mhm.
I remember I met an attending cardiologist who you'd never know in a million years had sleep apnea, like never know. And they were like, yeah, I have sleep apnea. I wear my CPAP and I feel just amazing. Like I feel so good
Yep.
because I'm finally getting restorative sleep. And I
Hmm.
never in a million years would have guessed the guy had sleep apnea, but it's just
Yeah,
crazy how prevalent it is and how detrimental it is not only to how your risk of diseases, but how you just feel. Like you can feel
totally.
and you can be normal weight and still have it.
Another thing I tell people who are trying to lose weight that, either don't are not quite buying into the fact that they might have sleep apnea or really don't want to wear a mask. First of all, we have a lot better things than just the mask now, that are more comfortable for patients. But untreated sleep apnea is a huge barrier to losing weight.
Mhm.
So that's another thing. Like if I have a patient who is doing all the right things and the weight is not coming off, I'm asking about their quality of sleep and could they have sleep apnea, because one of the reasons being those hormonal changes that drive appetite and metabolism, can really be impacted by treating or not treating your sleep apnea. So I'll often get people to jump on the train when I say, you might have more luck losing weight if we get your sleep apnea treated.
That is such a great point of like oftentimes if people have sleep apnea, we tell them to lose weight instead of saying, hey,
Yeah.
you're having a hard time losing weight. treating your sleep apnea might actually
Could
make
help
it
that.
easier for you to lose weight, which then would make your
Hmm.
sleep apnea better. That's such a
Yep.
great point. That's a really good point. So if we want to get tested, how do we do it?
There's a lot of ways to do it. I think a lot of people think about the traditional, like you go into a hospital, stay overnight and sleep there, and that can still happen. We at Crutch Family Care, we do a home sleep study that's really simple. Um, we work with a company that mails it right to your house. We just sign you up, and it's just this little like probe thing that you wear on your finger. There's no like head mask or anything. And it connects to an app on your phone. You do it for a few nights until you get valid results, literally just wearing that thing on your finger. And then they send the results to us, and we can make recommendations for treating for sleep apnea with a variety of different treatment. Um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Options?
Appliances,
Oh,
options.
fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, we don't have any financial, it's not like we don't make money if
Right.
somebody uses this company. We have no money, but it's people love it. I mean, it's so
It's
much
so
better.
easy.
So
Yeah.
easy. Mails it to you, puts it on your finger, you sleep, you put it back in the mail, you're done. Like
Yeah.
so easy. So yeah, we don't make any money off of this, but I mean, sleep apnea is such an underdiagnosed thing that this is like
Hmm.
so easy to do, you know,
Yeah.
so easy.
And so good. Like we have to reduce the barrier to testing if we want to treat it more. And that's exactly what this does.
Yeah, there's very few tests that are there that have more barriers than come here to sleep at night.
I know.
Yeah, it's like no, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah,
and it's
no.
expensive. It can be very
Yeah.
expensive to do that, you know, whereas this is so much easier. Okay, so we've
Yeah.
talked about sort of duration of sleep. We've talked about sleep apnea. Any take homes for us?
I would say like when we're focusing on improving health, like we cannot underestimate the power of good quality sleep. If we had a pill that does what sleep does, reducing your risk of heart disease by 35%, helping you lose weight, reducing your risk of diabetes, making you feel better in general, enjoying your life more. If we had a pill that did that, we would be putting it in the water. Like this is such a huge tool that can be capitalized on. And if you have problems sleeping, I know that that's another thing. Like it's not just sleep apnea, and it's not like sleep is an easy thing for people. Sleep can be really challenging for a number of reasons. So if you're having challenges with that, go speak to your healthcare provider, either with us at Kirkpatrick Family Care or somewhere else. Talk to somebody about options. And um, there's more than just like medications. You know, a lot of people don't want to take a pill; they want to get to that root underlying cause. And there's a lot of lifestyle stuff that we can talk with you about to
Mhm.
improve your sleep.
Yeah, that's well said. I think it is. We don't talk about it enough. We in
Hmm.
medicine don't talk enough about sleep. But
Hmm.
if we really, as a patient, as a doctor, as whoever, just want to live longer for better, you are putting yourself at risk for failing if you do not address your sleep. No doubt
Yeah.
about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Christy. Thank you so much for educating us on this. Yeah, and we'll keep coming out with some information again. We just want everybody to give themselves the best shot to live as long as possible and live as well as they can for as long as possible. So hope this helps, and we'll see you guys next time.